How do you think the role of your music has changed? Not the position of your music, but the role of your music in the world. How has that changed in 20 years?
Ooh, that's a big question. I don't know if I can fully answer that because it's such a large question for me. But certainly from a personal standpoint, as a singer and a front person, as a musician, I feel like when I first came into sort of the public consciousness, I was young and I just wanted to make a noise and be heard and have fun and entertain. And now that I've had a 21-year-long career, I think I see my role differently. You know, I feel like my job is different. I want to connect with people, I want to communicate, and I want to comfort. I think that's how I see my role.
You always talk about differences, people that are different, people that feel different, but you've always taken an approach which is not to make them feel you're normal, you're the same, but to actually tell them it's good to be different, you know, queer, cherry lips. But I imagine, you know, when you started with music, Angelfish, and then in the beginning Garbage, you were young yourself, you probably faced a lot of those problems, Valley Nation. But then as you grow older, it must be harder for you to communicate with that other part of you. Does that get harder sometimes to express?
No, I mean, if anything, it feels easier to me because I think that I have always felt alone and I've always felt like an oddball. Even at my height of success, I always felt like I wasn't quite the same as all the other people who were successful. I just somehow always felt different. Like I didn't really want a lot of the attention that comes from success. I didn't want to call photographers up and tell them I was leaving the house so they could photograph me. I didn't want to design shoes. I didn't want to, you know, make music that would get on the radio if I made certain compromises. You know, I've just always been a bit of an oddity. And I guess the longer I've survived in the music industry, the more I realise how different I am. And I do think differently. And as a result, there have been moments in my career when I felt really despondent because I believe that I think differently from the mainstream. I just do, you know.
When you started, there was a moment where there was a lot of rock bands that were fronted by women, you know, Cranberries, the Cardigans, no doubt, obviously. Nowadays, the music scene, especially for women, seems to have changed. There's not so much, at least in the mainstream, not so many rock bands with women up front, but more individual acts, more towards pop. How does that reflect the role of women in society, in this entertainment culture? How do you feel?
Well, I guess that's what drives me mad about the current culture is, yes, a lot of women are dominating pop music, but they're not necessarily dominating the culture if they are not willing to dance and be pretty and be pleasant and make happy music. If you're even remotely aggressive, remotely political, if you're not conventionally good looking, you are not given a moment of time from the media. And that has changed since I arrived on the scene, you know.
For the worse? I
think so, yeah. Because I know there's a billion wonderful women, like, you know, in the underground. You know, there's never been probably more fantastic talent than there is right now in the underground. But they don't get a moment's attention. Everybody's too busy looking at Kim Kardashian's boobs on social media, and all this phenomenal talent just gets, you know, left behind. And it breaks my heart and it makes me crazy because I don't think ultimately it's good for women.
I want to talk about that issue a lot because it's something you talk a lot about, which is I don't think that feminism is a gender issue. I think it should be both genders. And I remember a quote, there was once this interview where Pete Townshend was asked why he didn't write songs that women felt akin to. And he answered, understand women? I am a woman and no one can take that right away from me. How do you think male artists have to change in order for the situation of women to change in the entertainment industry?
I don't think men have to change at all. I just think they you know, they would be well served to speak up on behalf of women when they see fit. You know, I think a lot of men have sympathy, empathy, you know, treat women equally, love them, want them to have equality in the world. I don't think for a minute that most men really want women to be unequal. I really don't. And I don't, so therefore I agree with you. I don't think it's a gender issue whatsoever, but I think men do have to step into the debate, step into the conversation and enjoy the dialogue and really encourage our culture to value women in the same way as they value men.
How do you survive? Because you really, you said you always feel odd, but this is a world, this is an anti-Shirley Manson world.
It is an anti-Shirley Manson world.
And how do you survive?
Because I'm smart, you know, and I find people to be around that will allow me and join with me in allowing me to have an equal bearing in the world. You know, I mean, if I meet somebody who I believe is sexist, I, A, will challenge them and B, dismiss them in the same way that they're dismissing me. So I think if you employ that attitude and not allow somebody who's looking at you as an unequal, not to allow them to diminish you, then you take their power away from them. You know, the only time you allow them to have power is when you give it to them. When you say, yeah, here, take my equality. Sure, think of me as a lesser human being. That's handing over power. And I refuse to give over that power. God damn it!
And I want to talk about that for a moment, your band and your creative process. There was a moment for me that seemed when you were at the height of your music, of your popularity, that suddenly the music industry changed a little bit. And it was when you were recording Beautiful Garbage, in my opinion. And I feel that album is really special because you were trying to transform your music to do the same thing you were doing, but in a new atmosphere. And if you listen to Beautiful Garbage, it's very unlike the other records because every song is a different music style, it's a complete different composition, and you know, Can't Cry This Tear sounds like the 80s, and then Cheer Lips sounded very at that moment, but then you had some Shut Your Mouths rap. I mean, it was a crazy album, and it came out at a moment that was the music industry was changing, but you were also changing. I remember Butch got sick at that moment, and I remember that well, there was 9/11 happened after. Mm-hmm. And in terms of commercial success in the United States, it didn't fare so well. In the rest of the world, it did. But I feel that after that, you kind of took a musical decision of not trying to adapt like you did in Beautiful Garbage, but trying to go back to the basics. Was that a conscious decision? How was that process for you?
You know, I love that you say that about Beautiful Garbage because it was arguably our least commercially successful record, but I agree with you. I felt like we really took a risk on that record and we kind of did get punished for it in the end, but I'm still really proud of it because I do feel it was an investigation into music production and we were intrigued by it. You know, in particular, we had fallen in love with Timbaland, for a random example, but we were also obsessed with Phil Spector produced records, yeah. And we were interested in you know, the garage sounds that were becoming predominant at that time. And so to me, yeah, that record is really fascinating. And we did try a lot of different stuff and we went on a real adventure.
Will you do it again?
Well, it's funny you should ask that because I was talking about that just today. It's like, yeah, I hope we will take another diversion because I think life is short and you've only got a small amount of time and you may as well try. You may fail and you have to be prepared to deal with the consequences of that. But I feel like I am willing to deal with the consequences because I don't measure my career by how wholly successful it is. You know what I mean? Like I don't care if I'm not number one. I really don't. I don't care if people are looking at my picture in tabloid magazines. I really couldn't care less. I just want to be an interesting artist.
And now we're talking about Donald Trump, and we sort of share that because, I mean, Scotland just suffered something very similar with Brexit. I mean, Scottish people voted for staying in Europe, and then this idea of dividing when so much time has been taken to be able to unite, which is similar to the idea of the wall, two countries that are very, very close, Mexico and the United States in so many ways, and I didn't mean to say that I didn't like America, I love America.
I understand.
But it's something very similar to what happened in Scotland. what can he do as an artist, as a musician, against these forces of separation, of anger, of hate?
Well, it's funny, you sound like me. These are the questions I am constantly asking myself and asking my bandmates and my peers, because I feel very strongly, like you do, that people are just people. Mexicans are the same as the Russians are the same as the Chinese are the same as the Americans. We're all the same, we all want the same thing. And why we're all focusing on the differences between us rather than what unites us. And as a musician, I'm in a very privileged position where I get to see this because I travel all over the world. And I see that the planet does not belong to one individual country. One piece of earth doesn't really belong to us. We're renting it, so to speak. And we really have no right to exclude other people if they want to come in to that piece of land. It doesn't belong to us. Who are we to say, no, you cannot come into this country, And so I believe in unifying, and I always will. Music does unify, and I think just trying to be a unifying person in the world makes a change. I have no power other than I can just be a person who says, you're the same as me, brother. We want the same things. We shouldn't have to fight. We can talk about this. We can get heated, we can argue, but sooner or later, at the end of the night, we want to share a glass of whiskey together as one-on-one, and that's how I see the world.
Your last album sounds a lot like the album you were trying to put it out as a solo artist. I remember In the Snow, and then it sounds more similar to that. Did you have was this your garbage album? Was this more your moment? I
wanted to really be truthful. So in that regard, yeah, I guess it has a lot of my DNA on this record, because I was determined that I wanted to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. It's really personal.
Is there any song in your career that you feel was underappreciated by the public or the critics?
Well, I always say Cherry Lips was the one that got away. I always think that's a masterful pop song about an incredibly complex issue of transgender. Yeah, but it deals with it in a really beautiful, celebratory way.